Alright guys, good evening and welcome to the resumption of this series, which was very entertaining yesterday and started off with Sacrifice, perhaps surprising a few people and racing out to a 2-0 lead in pretty, not really short games, but fairly short games, and then after that Jidba seemed to wake up and kind of grind his way back to 2-2 in games that were decided more on attrition than anything else really. And those games 3 and 4 also saw the first usage of the markets in this series. I don't think people used it in games 1 and 2, and like both players tried the market rush, and Jidba came out the better on both occasions. So Jidba, master of the market, perhaps we could say. Jidba is here, so nothing like we had yesterday, where we were waiting for a long time for Jidba. It was actually quite funny because not only did he arrive late, he also had to leave early. And they had originally scheduled for a later time, and if he'd arrived if they played at the time that they'd originally agreed upon, he would have been leaving after 20 minutes. So God knows why he scheduled for that time to begin with. Yeah, somebody says, Rox says they waited for exactly 18 GMT. Strong. Yeah, both players have been in the room for 5+ minutes, but they did wait for the correct time, which is nice. Always good to consider the viewers. So here we go. This is game 5 of the series. It's essentially a best of 3 from this point. We've got a Frank's War on a map called Prairie, which is kind of like Green Arabia, except even more open and with no hills, and 2 scouts, as we can see them rushing out across the map here. Whoa, let me turn down that scroll speed a little bit too much. So Frank's War. Kind of a classic thing. I think this was one of the most played DM settings in terms of civilization back in the days of Age of Kings before the Conquerors came out. Cons arriving with expansion, obviously. I think the Paladins and the cavalry focus made it an exciting setting for players to play back then. Looking at the early Paladin raiding and light cav raiding that's going on. Actually, Paladin's yet to cross the map, but it seems Sacrifice picking a Ville, taking that one villager advantage just briefly. Looking at the maps, interesting to note this area for Jidba, everything is in the one place. All of his gold is forward and to the left, whereas for Sacrifice it's a bit more balanced, although that one's somewhat unfortunate, difficult to mine. Thank you for whatever that was. Was it a host, a follow, or notification? I have no idea. I just heard a noise. So sorry, I can't address that directly. Both players just building up, spamming paladins across the map, trying to pick off vills. Jidba has actually now taken a 2-villager advantage over Sacrifice, but it's evening up just as I speak. The halbs are starting to come out in defence of the raiding now. Jidba will drop a forward castle on that all-important front main gold. As the code Interdimension is mentioning here, Jidba very badly housed indeed. He's only made himself 35 population room, whereas Sacrifice has created plenty of spare housing for himself. You can see him building up tons here, so he's already got 70 population room, and Jidba's population has been stuck at 35 for like the last 30 seconds or more, and Sacrifice running out to a nice early lead now, continuing to flood some paladins in amongst now, hearing villagers continue to go down. Jidba down to 4 villagers, and okay, 2 of those are occupied in front of the castle, and even another one might go down, so that castle going to take a long time to go up, going to occupy that villager for some time, and Jidba's really not got the villagers to continue adding in extra facilities, building extra houses at the back, starting to put down TCs maybe in places, or push out across the map and add extra castles like Sacrifice is doing. So nice early advantage for Sacrifice here, much the same as yesterday, whereas Jidba just came out slow, didn't really train in advance, play any warm-up matches. It's been the same today. He was online early at least, but he was AFK the whole time. I don't know if Sacrifice was practicing warming up, but he's certainly got the fastest start here yet again. And although the population difference isn't gigantic, the early difference in villagers cannot be overstated in terms of allowing the players to spread their wings and take map control. See Sacrifice already doing a good job pushing out into the middle of the map, so he's building up in front of his all of his gold mines that are more towards the front. Might even be nice to kind of delete some of the infrastructure around this main gold just to help him mine it better. Also getting on that back gold, starting to do farming eco at minute 8. That's pretty nice. Whereas we see for Jidba, no farming eco whatsoever. Don't even see a complete. Okay, he's just completed his second TC, whereas Sacrifice already has several more and has 4 castles as well, which has enabled him to really get a head start on adding throwing axemen into the mix, which are the counter for the halberdiers in this kind of mixed combination army that you'll see for France. This is pretty standard: paladin, halberdier, throwing axeman. Jidba's putting in 2 TCs right next to each other on these main golds. Castle in the middle of all of them as well. He really wants to secure this area, obviously. It's so important that he does. And Sacrifice is doing a good job of applying nice pressure on two sides now. I think he's picked off the Vill that was putting up these TCs. I don't see any Vill in this region, so that's going to delay Sacrifice getting onto that area even further. Jidba, a lot of Jidba's army being lured away by sort of 20-25 paladins here, meaning Sacrifice able to move in and do good damage in the front, although 2 castles he'll be wanting to retreat. But even so, Sacrifice, even as he does that, Sacrifice enters the Smarties 11-month subscription. Thank you very much. Always appreciated. Yeah, even as Sacrifice moving in the front and retreating on the left, he was raiding from the back as well, taking down another TC builder, and that's going to delay Jidba's farming eco even further. Now we see 32 to 20 villagers. Sacrifice needs to fix these idols here, but his eco is still looking in much better shape. Siege workshop starting to come out, and trebuchets from the castle. Sacrifice, with his early advantage, is ready to start really putting the pressure on Jidba and try and destroy all these forward castles. I think we'll see prolonged Treb War trying to basically decide whether Jidba's going to get to access his golds or not. Maybe some bombard cannons coming out of those siege workshops to pick off Jidba's Trebs if that Treb War develops. Interesting kind of strategic castle on the left hand side here. Sacrifice trying to dissuade Jidba from just raiding down the left hand side. Also one on the right as well. These are very much map control castles because there are not really any resources worth taking in the area. Just about controlling lanes, almost like a MOBA. Okay, so Treb War begins. Seems Jidba possibly a little bit ahead on that Treb production, even though he had largely fallen behind in other aspects earlier on. The military has more or less evened out, but Sacrifice extending his economy lead. Going to check the resources for both players. Jidba's still got plenty in the bank, although he's still away from PopCap. Sacrifice, likewise, although much closer to PopCap. Once again, fantastic raid in the back, idling all the villagers that were going to start working on those farms. Those lane control castles paying off, and Sacrifice kicking off the Treb War in the middle as well. Just a quick look at relic wise. Sacrifice already with 2. We saw both players do a good job of getting relics in alternate games yesterday. I think most games one player ended up with like 4 relics, but they kind of alternated between which one of them it was. Onagers and bombard cannons being added to the mix. Onagers doing great work against these throwing axemen as they look to come and take out the Trebs. One castle goes down for Jidba. Don't see that one has gone down yet for Sacrifice, so that's 1-0 on the castle front for him. Oh, great Onager shot for 2 for 1 there. And 1 Treb going down as well. This is where, with both players having got their pop-up now and getting their kind of end-game combined arms force, if you like, it starts to get a bit standoffish. I remember seeing Frank's War from Jidba, one of the games I saw from, what was it called? The Uprising. He's playing against Andrew, I think. Democracy of Gods took absolutely forever. Jidba is so patient in these situations. He really looks to grind you down. So kind of appeared to me at that time. I don't want to characterise him generally off the basis of seeing one game, but it appeared to me that he was very, very risk averse. Wow, Sacrifice almost stealing a relic from here. That was literally 5 tiles from from Jidba's monastery, but the paladins picking it off. Almost. Is he going to get this one on the left as well? I don't know. Just Halberdiers coming here for now. Yes. Jidba wisely sending a monk out just to try and get that relic before it gets transported any further away from his base. It looked like Sacrifice would easily intercept that, but just as the relic arrives on the scene, Sacrifice's army retreats, and Jidba will manage to get that one relic after all. Such one-sided commentary from the expert players in the chat here. They're like, oh damn, because they're all Quendies, of course. Kellen and others. Bombard cannon dodgeball kicking off on the front. Both players basically in the same situation with villagers and military at this point, populations. Sacrifice still with better control over the map overall, and still has only hunted down 2 of the relics. There's one in the bottom corner which will be his, and there's one in the left side which should be Jidba's. Jidba has more or less depleted these 2 front golds now, so that vulnerability on his map where all of his golds were forward is starting to be erased once he's actually taken all that gold. Wow, if those Onagers could get the shots on the Axeman, I really think he should go for the Axeman here. I seem to remember this happening in that Frank's War that I was talking about that I watched from Uprising as well, because like players, like they see the Trebs and they want to go for Trebs, but sometimes you can kill like 20 Axemen with 1 shot, and you almost feel like that's a better choice if you only get 1 shot. This is the first time we've seen Jidba really extend past the top left third of the map. That's his starting area, starting to apply some pressure to Sacrifice's structures on the left hand side. Could be some useful raiding in the back here for Sacrifice. Looks like a few more villages have gone down, but his Paladin's now preoccupied with attacking buildings and will get shot up by the castle and the TC. Easy snipes on those Trebs by the bombard cannons. Such a nice counter weapon for that sort of situation, with just a little bit of micro. Both players are quite passive really. We haven't seen Sacrifice doing a massive push from that middle base that he has, and now Jidba getting a little bit adventurous with a large group of paladins on the left hand side. Sacrifice sending 2 monks to go and get this relic, just in case one's not enough. Hopefully Sacrifice sees this before all of his villagers go down. The rest of his army is on hand to clean up all of these paladins for Jidba. Very, very cost effective fight this for Sacrifice here. That's a lot of pala gold down, with Sacrifice having, I think, more paladins or even number, but lots of halbs in the mix as well to take that favourably. Looking at resources though, Jidba with 7,000 gold in the bank, and just stockpiling everything else as well. There's nothing stopping him being at PopCap 200 here, so I'm surprised, although he did just lose all those paladins. You would assume that he would replenish all of that soon. Jidba probably getting his gold's worth with that little raid with the paladins there. A few paladins going down in return for a few monks and some siege. Sacrifice going to move in onto the left and look at all this. Well, I'm not going to say exposed farmland because there's 4 TCs here. Look at that reaction by Jidba, so fast. All of the villagers just disappearing into the TCs almost simultaneously. It was practically like he rang Town Bell, but he didn't. Very quick reactions on point there for Jidba. If he was having a bit of a slow start like yesterday to begin with, it seems his speed is right up to where it needs to be now. Let's check Sacrifice's resources. Doesn't have the bank of gold that Jidba has. Lots of food, not really any wood. Lots of stone in the bank. Continuing to raid better, in my opinion. Jidba with 75 idols out of 99. That always hurts your opponent's economy. But when Jidba is as resource rich as he is, aside from food, it's not going to have a decisive effect if it's not something that continues for forever and ever. But that's it. When he's hurting for food, I suppose it's the most painful thing to have to hide all those villages with the TCs, even for a few moments. Those paladins being lured here, they could be eaten up by the halbs and throwing axemen in quick order here. That's like 1 bombard cannon being sacrificed, but then Jidba's paladins being kind of aggro to run over here and all get slaughtered. So that was a nice little lure there. it just happens because Jidba just isn't paying attention to that one spot on the map at that exact moment. Obviously, so hard to pay attention to everything, but you know, the game is played on such fast speed, and if you just get a ball of units aggroed and go to the wrong place, it can be quite costly sometimes. Sacrifice with a lot of stuff going down here though, just quite nice for Jidba. We see so much dead red stuff here and nothing much blue that's gone down. Looks like Sacrifice starting to develop an interest in the right side. He's brought a lot of trebs over here. That castle is kind of a gateway to being able to raid all this food eco and push into Jibba's base from the right hand side, and Sacrifice has got a lot of stuff here to defend it from paladins, but unfortunately with Jibba replying to that with the throwing axemen, the mass throwing axemen, and potentially even bringing onagers in to shoot the trebs, but driven back by some paladins from Sacrifice. Still, that will go so effectively for Jidba. Those throwing axemen just pretty much vaporising everything that was there, and Sacrifice's population starts to fall a little lower. Still though, I think overall Sacrifice, with slightly better map control, and has just kind of spread his wings a little bit more. Remassing to try and push a little bit on the left hand side as well, but Jidba is also there, and seems the players are more or less just chasing around each other around in the front. Jidba continues to float tons of resources, whereas Sacrifice hurting for gold a little bit, but plenty in the bank as far as food eco, and he's also preserving 3,500 stone to add more castles in important locations later on, or perhaps even to sell should he choose. See right now, 3 relics for Sacrifice, 2 for Jidba. Sacrifice has collected roughly double the relic gold so far. Both players with markets, of course, and I think with the fact that Sacrifice had slightly more relic gold, and they've basically both managed to mine all the gold that belonged to them. I think the difference in gold bank that develops may be due to Jidba having reached the market a little bit faster. I don't think either player did market rush at the start, though I may have missed it whilst I was fixing my scroll speed. But I think a little bit later on, once it gets to the point where you start to sell all of your food that you start banking up, I think Jidba maybe sold in the mid game a little bit earlier. Looks like the players starting to mass for a big battle over here, but neither wanting to commit too much. Jidba is happy to just sit there and slowly pick away at those buildings. Jibba's gonna emerge from that little skirmish with just enough throwing axemen to end that trebuchet destruction of the castle. Yep. So that castle will live. Jidba is repairing it. Has plenty of stone in the bank, just as Sacrifice does to repair castles forevermore. So I think we're in for a long game here, because both players just kind of stabilised, both at roughly the pop cap. There is the gold bank difference that remains, but neither player really hurting for resources at this point, considering they're sitting at the pop cap and not really losing huge amounts at this point, just kind of seeing what they can do, probing around with raiding and then retreating when it gets too hot without losing too much. This is looking like a nice raid for Sacrifice now though. He should be able to pick up a lot of bills before Jidba gets into the TCs here. And overall he's still the one that's trying to initiate more overall, I think. I was characterising Jidba as kind of patient and risk averse earlier, and I think that is playing out in the actual game right now. Jidba doesn't seem to be doing anything really ambitious. He's just kind of waiting patiently for the fight that is going to go really in his favour, and otherwise trying not really wasting army anywhere too much. And Sacrifice bringing more or less everything over to the left hand side now, just as Jidba starts to get a little bit opportunistic here on the right with a one treb and trying to add in some barracks to try and just guard those trebs with a few halbs. Oh, those Onager shots could have been absolutely devastating for Sacrifice, but somehow it didn't seem to do too much damage to the Axeman. Then I'll switch to his point of view so I can double click them all, and then we'll see if they all went on to low HP. Yeah, a lot of them taking a ton of damage now, and Jidba is, I was saying that he was waiting for that one fight that was going to go really, really well for him, and he seems to have found it, he seems to have picked it, and now he's going to move forward and just destroy all of this satellite base that Sacrifice has right against the west edge of the map. Just patiently, cautiously take control of a little bit more map. As he does more or less the same thing on the right hand side as well. I'm surprised he's getting away with starting to destroy all these buildings with just one undefended treb, and Sacrifice is going to finally put an end to that. Where we can see the loss of that little base on the left hand side has led to Sacrifice just ceding a little bit more ground, and now basically he's on the halfway line of the map instead of encroaching into Jidba's territory. Sacrifice with no gold in the bank now, whereas Jidba is still very rich with 3,000. And permanently pop capture at the moment. Both players just kind of disengaged. Jidba's got the economy to fight for days and days now. Bass needs to play the tree game, says Kellen in the chat, wants Sacrifice to go and deny the wood chopping operation of Jidba. Siege Onager's not available to Fax, of course, although you could sit there treb cutting forests if you really, really wanted to. I think that would be a waste of APM. It requires so much micro to sit there micromanaging treb cutting of whole forests. Sacrifice should pick a castle on the front here. Jidba is ready to go and attack those trebuchets, but it might just be too late for the castle to survive. But the thing is, taking down one castle when the players have so much stone in the bank and they get cheap castles as Franks, it's only a minor victory. Sacrifice will try and get this Onager with his trebs, and he manages to do so without sustaining too many losses to his throwing axemen. Monks will heal the damage that was done there. It's a pretty effective attack round with the trebuchets. Sacrifice continuing to just wear that throwing axeman battalion down with a fantastic attack ground. Seems like the players are getting ready for a big fight. Importantly here, some Onagers for Jidba, none for Sacrifice. And Sacrifice is avoiding Jidba landing the big shot on his axeman group just now, but that one will have done some damage to the ones on the exterior of the formation. And wisely, I think Sacrifice is now adding a couple of his own Onagers to try and inflict the same thing upon Jidba. Army numbers have really decreased for Sacrifice now. He's on 170 population and only 60 army. He does have more villagers than Jidba, but to an extent I think Jidba may have either kind of sent some villagers to die to free up pop space for army because he's so he's got so many resources in the bank, or maybe he deleted some just to get a bigger army at this point. Whereas for Sacrifice not managing to stay up at the pop cap and needing that. Actually, he's got 16,000 food in the bank. I am so surprised that the players aren't just selling the food and in particular off when they've got 17,000. That you may only get a tiny amount of gold for 100 food, but I still think it's worth doing when you've got this much, and especially if you're going to wall off the whole map a bit to protect raiding. It's actually got doing it from one side to the other. You know, you couldn't guarantee that your farming eco in the back is going to be safe for the next few minutes to get you an extra few thousand food, so sell more. Here we go. That's what I wanted. Sold off nearly 10,000 food there, and that's perfectly fine. And now he's got the gold to add in some more paladins on it as whatever he likes, throwing axemen. It doesn't last long, of course, but still, when you've got that much in the bank, you're better off making use of it than sitting there with 20,000 food in the bank and nothing to combine with it to create paladins. See how this fight goes. Spread formation for the paladins, for the axemen. Both players avoiding catastrophic Onaga shots on their closed formations, but some good ones coming in for sacrifice now, and that is a fantastic engagement for him in terms of throwing axemen, or it would have been if this Onaga wasn't softening up Sacrifice's own ones. Still, I think that fight was a nice trade for Sacrifice overall, but now we see both players with severely diminished populations and needing to remass army, and it seems both of them are just going to go back and do precisely that. There's no desire to risk it all by continuing to push just now. And Jidba will have the advantage in replenishing those losses with the fact that he still does have a bit of a bank of gold, whereas for Sacrifice, pretty much empty, apart from a slow trickle from the relics and whatever he chooses to sell off. No longer though sitting with 17,000 wood and food. Seems Sacrifice's walling off of the entire map was denied by some throwing axemen sneaking in on the left hand side. Jidba's even started cutting trees within range of a TC there, but Sacrifice not garrisoning vills to kill them off. Both players getting towards the pop cap. No surprise to see that the compositions of the two armies are starting to be much more halberdier oriented, given that they both lost huge amounts of gold in that big fight we just saw, and now they're kind of making up the numbers with units that are costing only food and wood in the form of these halberdiers. But I think Sacrifice still with more throwing. Actually, no, that's a complete lie. I was going to say more throwing axemen on the field because he came out of that fight with more, and he's taking a nice fight against Jidba's axemen here. But look at this from Jidba, he's got so many more on the way. I wonder if Sacrifice sold any stone at any points. I think he had like 3,000 plus stone, and I don't think he's made more than a couple more castles. He did wall the whole map as well, which will have cost a few hundred stone, but I wonder if he sold a little bit. Sheep Bandit, sponsor of the tournament, suggesting that Sacrifice will have more control of the woodlines, which is indeed true because Jidba's ones are starting to run pretty scarce, all the ones in the back of the map close to being depleted at this point, and then the kind of next row of woodlines for him are all in these contested areas, are just on the other side of Sacrifice's wall, which he has now completed, whereas Sacrifice has a lot more in the back of his map still, and he also has kind of control of the middle ones that are on the halfway line. So if we're getting to a really, really long game, and the current, well, Sacrifice manages to hold this line, then he will have more wood going for him, as well as the fact that it's worth remembering he does have 3 relics to 2 as well, to give him tiny little bit more gold income as we progress into the super long game. Jidba's going to clean up this area, which is just getting control of that wood line there, and he's immediately moving bills out there to build up a lumber camp and get going, steal some wood. Seems all these top DMers thinking the same way. Secure the wood eco. Some raiding on the left hand side, but it's only killing a handful of wood choppers there. Albs arrive on the sea and Sacrifice gets out there. In general, won't want to. Fine to take a fight or two against a few isolated halberdiers, but won't want to risk against a larger group at this point. Those paladins are so precious, costing a lot of gold as they do. I thought that we had the potential for the first massive engagement in a while to develop there, but Sacrifice doesn't want to have any of it. Just sends in a few halberdiers to die and then retreats with the axemen. He's going for the treb sniping of enemy units again with the attack ground. But those trebs, as they impact, could be vulnerable to an Onager shot or two here. Those shots that was a better shot. I was going to say those shots were unfortunate for Sacrifice. As the Onagers popped out, they could have gone right into the midst of Jidba's Axeman formation. Instead, hitting more around the edges until that last Onager took out Jidba's. 3 more coming forward for Jidba. This is quite dangerous for Sacrifice, because I think, you know, if a couple of big shots land in the middle of this, Sacrifice is going to have real trouble getting his numbers back up. And that so very nearly happened there. Shots landing on the trebuchets, those pricely things to lose at this stage. But Sacrifice gets those vulnerable siege weapons out of the way and goes to destroy Jidba's Onagers with halberdiers, but once Onager sneaks around the left hand side, great shot by Jidba just before that Onager is destroyed. A little bit of a sharp intake of breath for me as these Onager shots continue to rain in. See Jidba, he uses stand ground so much, like sometimes he gets caught out with it, and he has an army that doesn't really get involved in a fight, but at other times he does so well at like making sure his army doesn't stray into a bad spot and get wasted. Sacrifice's wall has been chopped through. I feel like we've entered a state of hyperinflation with the Ruby Gold. Interesting debate going on up here. Is 70 vills enough now? Because Jidba has gone down to 70 villagers, continues to have ridiculous amounts of resources in the bank, and maintaining a large army, not pop-capped. But Kellan's view on that is that with the way they're fighting, how cautious they are, how patient they are, he says that 70 villagers is enough, and who can argue with that when Jidba has almost 20,000 food in the bank? Sacrifice, meanwhile, with 55 more villagers and has half of the food banked. He did sell off a huge amount for gold, as we saw some time ago. Seems like Jidba is starting to really take advantage of the fact that these holes have appeared in the walls now, trying to flood some trash into through the hole in the left hand side, try and see if he can find some eco, see if he can find a vulnerability, but not exactly using that distraction to also initiate a push in the middle of the map. Instead, it seems that he's the one kind of just taking a few steps back, and Sacrifice is being a tiny little bit more adventurous. These Onager shots. Wow, this is what I said about Jidba. Sometimes, like, does he put someone stand ground, they don't react. I mean, that was, I don't know, 10 axemen going down for nothing much there. I guess the thing is, if he had them on attack, aggressive or defensive, the axemen could have come forward and he could have lost the whole lot. So I think it's still good on overall. It's just something that requires you to have a lot of attention and multitasking to make sure you either retreat or advance with those stand ground units and they don't just stand there idly getting destroyed or killed. Trebs go down on the right hand side for Sacrifice, but not before Jidba's immediately replacing the castle. And looks like Sacrifice has plugged the gap on the left-hand side at least, or at least stop the flood. A little while ago we had one of the players spectating say, "Why no light cav rating?" And as if they're both reading that chat, both players are now starting to produce light cav rating. I guess it didn't make sense for Jidba. Considering Sacrifice had walled off the entire map, but once the holes opened up, which are now being patched up, then you could start to at least go through with some light cav. Seems Jibba's well, I was going to say he's hurting for places to mine chop wood, looking at what's going on here with these villagers, but he does still have access to plenty on the right hand side and some on the left hand side as well, which he's not taking. How much does he have in the bank at this point? 9,500. So still, it's getting to the point where, you know, if the players continue to add in lots of trash, and maybe if Jidba sells some, he won't have much left once this bank is actually gone. Whereas Sacrifice probably still with access to more overall, I think. Although not terribly more. And he doesn't have quite as big a bank. Sacrifice should use all those skirms there. I'm just going to have a look at total gold collected. Actually 4,000 or 3,500 in Sacrifice's favour altogether. I feel like I've missed an Onaga shot somewhere on the map here that these guys are discussing. I don't see tons of units that have gone down for Jidba though. This is just trash being sent into the meat grinder here. Total war of attrition, and I think anything that starts to have a real effect on the game in terms of a big push is going to happen on the right side, because this is where the players are congregating their siege and their axemen. And Sacrifice also has more eco on the right hand side as well, so if Jidba broke through this wall, that would be something that could really affect the course of the game. Okay, Kellen is listening to me saying Sacrifice's Onaga was shooting his own units because of attack ground. We've all been there, we've all done that. I was playing a game the other day where I was attacking ground against some enemy rams, and then I looked away from it a second and my ally just walked all his longbows into it because I hadn't stopped it. But he should have seen it. I still blame him. We still won the game though, it was fine. It was just a temporary setback. This game is so horrible, says Kellen. Yep, this is pretty much the definition of a war of attrition, and neither player is risking anything here. There's so much on stake, with this being the Gold Cup and some pretty hefty prizes. But I guess the players do have the insurance policy of this being a double elimination bracket in the Gold Cup. I don't know if it's also the same in the Silver Cup too. We'll have to check on that. Awesome. Very costly engagement here for Sacrifice. Those Onagas from Jidba just ripping up his Axeman formation. Axemen are not units that can be easily replaced at this stage of the game. Left hand side is still a trash meat grinder, so let's concentrate on the right. Sacrifice sending in his halbs, which are just being ripped apart by those Axemen that Jidba has there. Relic count is 3 to 2 for Sacrifice. Oh, T90 are so evil, reminding Smarky of the time you destroyed all the Jannies. Man, that was pretty cool. Attack ground on your allies is definitely the best policy with your Onagas, but it's the kind of thing that also gets you investigated by Vuga's mod team, so I don't recommend doing it too much. But you did it on HD, so it's perfectly fine. There's no mod team there, is there? No game moderation. Cheap shot, cheap shot. Shots fired. Okay. resuming my focus here because it's easy to get distracted in such a long game. Bastion or Sacrifice starting to do some good raiding in the back here, but Jidba, as we have observed before, is a rich man, although he doesn't have 20,000 food in the bank now, only 7,000. So starting to get to the situation where raiding can at least achieve something. It's not just throwing away units. If you wear your opponent's food bank down a little bit more, maybe they sell more and then they suffer raiding, it actually starts to be harmful instead of just not really having any impact. Jidba's not floating any gold. Sacrifice is the one actually starting to float a little bit more gold, so maybe that extra relic's starting to actually help him. Also worth noting that he may have been able to sell more since he was sitting on more villagers than Jidba for a long time, and that may have enabled him to use the market more. And Jidba is down to just 60 bills, which okay, they're still being largely very cautious. It's not a huge meat grinder. So you can just about get away with it, but I wouldn't want to see that number fall too much lower than 60, 65. Whilst he does what they've just observed and left Jidba winning the game inch by inch, like he can just about afford to continue with this strategy of 60 odd bills and maintain 100 plus army, I say. It does feel like Jidba is now the one who's doing all of the kind of initiative in terms of actually trying to make meaningful advances rather than just a tiny bit of raiding in the back with the odd light cav. And finally we see that little bank of stone that Jidba is holding on to being used to build a forward castle here and try and gain a little bit more territory for Sacrifice a little bit further back. That Onega going down there with very little payoff. Sacrifice could have got a couple of shots away in the time that one was walking. But look at Jidba's population, it's starting to get really, really low, whereas Sacrifice staying high. But even though he has the higher population, he's the one who's just falling back, conceding a little bit of ground. Jidba still has a bunch of trebs waiting in the back ready to be deployed, whereas Sacrifice only with one, so it's hard for him to really make a push with one treb. Look at Jidba's trees. He doesn't have to he's getting wood from here. Where else is he getting it? Let me just drag the screen quickly. He doesn't have any. Sacrifice would do well to build a wall in front of this forest as well, just to stop Jidba chopping it. But Jidba does have 9,000 in the back, that's the thing, whereas Sacrifice has 800. So, although Sacrifice has a good amount to chop on the right hand side, by the time he's chopped that forest, it's probably amounting to about the same amount. And at that point, both players will be out of wood. See how this fight goes. I think Jidba, possibly with a few more axemen. They're also being used to good effect to slaughter all of Sacrifice's halberdiers, but Sacrifice also has elite skirms in the mix. I don't think we've really seen many, if any, of those elite skirmishes from Jidba thus far. Except maybe on the left hand side. Don't know. Has he got archery ranges? Don't think he has actually.
Yes.
Yeah, Jidba definitely with a few more axemen involved in this fight, which make a good shield at this point to allow Jidba to move forward with his trebs and start eliminating some of this production, these production buildings that Sacrifice has. Growing axemen just such effective trash killers. The elite skirms can kind of damage them afar, but as soon as you throw light cav in at the elite skirms, then it just means that those axemen can sit in the back just shredding everything. And it's starting to look ominous for Sacrifice. And as I say that, Sacrifice calls it GG. I don't think he enjoyed that game too much, judging by the chat. He was about to lose his monasteries with the relics as well, which I think would have been a decisive blow in the end. Does resign with 1,000 gold in the bank, so could have maybe used that to have a last stand, but he calls it. And that was a long game, almost an hour of real time there. Quickly show these achievements before we back out. Sacrifice and more of anything, but Jidba, much better kill to death ratio overall, took slightly better fights there. And just inched his way forward ever so slowly. It really was inch by inch, as the spectators were saying. And Jidba is within 1 point of making it through to the next stage of the winner's bracket, so remaining in the top bracket, where he sacrificed 1 game from falling down to the loser's bracket. Mem says, please now, a 3-hour game. T90, I'm not going to go with the terrible sacrifice puns, because I did enough of those yesterday. Somebody's saying my mic needs to go a tiny little bit louder. Don't know if that's the case. I'm going to turn it up to 5%. Seems there's a raging debate in the chat about the merits of Frank Wars right here. Players have gone into the game room. No spec delay counting down just yet. Bye guys. Actually just trying to get Kellen to come and join me. Kellen, if you're listening, I'm in the Vubli TeamSpeak. So just join me if you want to come. Right, Game 6 is a double TC start on Green Arabia, Goth's War. I think we saw a single TC Goth's War yesterday on Green Arabia. I think that was the home map pick for Jidba. Or maybe it was game 1, I can't remember. But we've certainly seen like some repetition of settings through this series. Clem saying double GA Goth gives you DM chills. Yeah, I think you're referring to that game that went on forever, aren't you? I think I just need to drag Kellen in.
User was moved to your channel.
Hello, sir.
Hey.
Which mic are you hearing? Just 1 second, let me fix this, because you might be hearing my terrible mic. Can you hear me okay with this microphone?
Hold on 1 second. Okay. Sorry, my volume was turned down.
Okie doke. Who do you favour in this this double Arabia Goths war then? See Sacrifice a little bit better start.
Well, the way the Sacrifice has been starting, like last game, that was crazy how fast he was and how he was all over Jidba so early. And in a double Arabia, you just need a lot of speed. So I'm gonna give a small edge to Sacrifice, but we'll see how it goes.
Seemed like he did race out to a much higher population than Jidba initially, but then Jidba kind of fended off that rush quite favourably, and he's the one who got ahead in the population in the end, but it's still only early days.
Right, and it would seem though too, Sacrifice, he's using a lot more Halberdier. I mean, sorry, not Halberdier, Huskarl than Jidba was, which is kind of a bad thing. It costs more gold. You can see that he's lower on gold now than Jidba. And now that fight in the bottom, that's going to probably be bad for Sacrifice, as he's losing all of his Scorpions to just a few champions. Oof.
Yeah, it's looking pretty difficult already for him actually, isn't it? Down to just 200 gold, which is a killer. And kind of losing tons of ground on the bottom side of the map already. But doing better in the north, trying to stabilise there. Taxis. That's the truth. Goth champ sucks. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that assessment.
No, yeah, I know Dane Praxis. He loves his Huskarls, and you know they can be really good sometimes, especially if you mix them right with the Scorpions. But yeah, anyway, this game is definitely heavily in favor of Jidba now at this point, I would say.
Yeah, Sacrifice wasting a lot in the north. I'll say he's sacrificing his army just for UT90. And population getting perilously low. Army less than half the size of Jidba at this point. And a little bit behind the villages as well. And more or less losing like part of his southern base as well. How's the eco looking? Jidba starting to get into a good number of farms, likewise Sacrifice laying them down. Neither player completely exhausted on food at this point, although Jidba's starting to get low, so that farming eco getting going just in time for him, but he isn't the player who needs to replace so much army at this point because he's continuing to maintain higher numbers. And with 2,500 gold,
I'd say this fight in the south is probably kind of bad for Jidba at this point. He lost all of his Scorpions pretty easily there.
Yep. Sacrifice cleaned all that up. Now it's kind of given Jidba Sacrifice the opportunity to stabilise there, but Jidba's built a castle on that hill just in front of that area, and that's taking control of basically the second and third gold that starts at that southern TC for Sacrifice. So even though he's lost the army down there, Jidba, he's taken some important map control and resource control down there. Also a TC in that bottom corner where there are 2 relics.
Yes.
One relic apiece at this point actually collected up. Jidba starting to inch out with the Trebs in the north. Takes down a castle. And that forward gold mine wisely being eaten up by Sacrifice before he loses access to it, which I think could happen in not too distant future.
I'm trying to determine a way for Sacrifice to make a comeback in this game. I like that he seems to be getting on farms a little bit more than Jidba, although Jidba has actually more farms. So at this point I would say Sacrifice is ahead on all counts. I mean, he's behind in all counts. Jidba is definitely winning the game. At this point, Jidba might just slow down and play safe, which we all hope he doesn't do that again, but
certainly a part of his DNA. I jinxed myself in the previous game by saying, yeah, I think I remember Jidba as kind of a patient player and cautious player, risk averse. You know, when I watched him in the Uprising, and then he proves it.
yeah,
to a
exactly.
ridiculous extent in the previous game. We talked in one of the Winchester DM sets that we casted about, I think he built up a 10,000 gold bank against Clemenceau, and Jidba's well on his way here, which would be a stupendous achievement, playing a player of the quality of Sacrifice to rebuild a 10,000 gold bank.
I guess in Goths it's kind of easy to do, because Goths are pretty cheap unless you have a ton of Scorpions.
Yeah, and Sacrifice actually got quite a lot of gold in the bank as well here. Managing to get on one of those forward goals in front of his base, so stopping Jidba from stealing all of it.
I like that the Sacrifice is pushing the middle. I think the middle is a very key aspect of Double Arabia. And so far that's going pretty well for Bass. For Sacrifice. Also, Sacrifice just took a really nice fight there with the Bombard Cannon, shooting all those Scorpions in the north.
Yeah.
Oh, and another nice fight in the south coming in here for Sacrifice. I mean, if you could get away with nice kills with champions, it's always a nice thing in Goths, because champions are just so cheap.
Yep, looks like those Trebs might have a chance of taking down the castle too, although no, Jidba's going to raid it with the Skulls. Not enough champion meat shield. Seems Sacrifice is kind of pulling away completely from the kind of top right. Jidba does have a lot of Scorpions there, but Sacrifice sending everything more, well, some to deal with some raiding, and then just pulling back a bit. I guess there's not...
Yeah, Sacrifice just took another relic, which is good for him. He needs... Okay, so now at least he's gonna have 2, and Jidba just needs to take the south one in order to have a 3-2 lead. Goss, I would say, having a relic advantage is probably, like, of all civs, that's probably the best civ to have a relic advantage, I would say, just because of how cheap their infantry is. So if I were Bastion in this, I'm sorry, Sacrifice.
I think everybody would know now. You're probably stop correcting yourself.
I hope so. I hope so. I would be probably trying to go for the south, just because there's not only a gold mine there, but there's also a relic, or the middle. It's kind of a hard choice. I'd probably take the south just for the relic lead.
Decent fight in the north there with one Bombard Cannon just doing work, just taking down Scorpion with every single shot. The Skull's starting to clean up some of those Scorps, but good fight in the north for Sacrifice. So he's kind of stabilised after we were fearing it was looking really bad for him in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, he almost lost one of his starting bases. I mean, it kind of came, you know...
Are you there?
Fairly close to a GG, and then now it's pretty close. Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, sorry, you might cut just for a second. Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I think we just lost you just for a brief second.
Alright, no worries. Look at the gold count, too, for both. They both have... Actually, Sacrifice now has the bigger bank. Pretty amazing, really.
Most likely a product of those better fights that we've seen him taking. Jidba with lots of food banked up, though, too, which is probably the most important one to have a bank of it, as long as you've got some gold.
True.
While Sacrifice really at the limit for food, and suffering some raiding into his farming eco as well, which doesn't help the situation. Looks like a few of the skulls in the south will delete Jidba's TC there. Maybe Sacrifice will try and claim it. That's southern gold. But population's just fallen too much for Sacrifice again, in particular like the military. A lack of food really hurting him. He's not able to reinforce after the kind of big fights that have happened, and now Jidba's just taking advantage, moving forward a little bit. Starting to actually get into Sacrifice's base on both sides. He really needs to get farming eco running at a high speed now, or he's going to lose a lot of his structures.
Right.
Because he just can't reply to it, has no food.
Yeah, and he actually has 55 farmers, which is a good amount, but it just seems that maybe he's wasting them too much. I don't know. what is causing him to be so low on military. And now he's gonna lose the relics.
I mean, that's something that is not going to be decisive in the near term, but if he doesn't get them back later on, then that'll be important.
I think he'll actually be okay here. The only problem is that Jidba is controlling so many gold mines on the map. He's got the 2 in the north, the 2 in the middle now, and the 1 in the south, all under his control. That's a lot of gold mines.
Jibba's really hitting him where he hurts as well, just Huskarl's just reappearing in that eco all the time, the farming eco. 46 idle bills for sacrifice. Who at least does have a bit of a food bank though, but he's actually popped it below the population limit now. He's housed badly. Trying to see if he's building houses anywhere to rectify that. He built most of his houses in that southern TC base, didn't he? And he's quite lost a lot of that area now.
This could be bad in the north. Those onagers are gonna kill all those scorpions.
God.
Ooh.
This is ugly.
Ouch. And GG.
Yeah. Well, that was really well played by Jidba. Just kind of took an early advantage in the south. Took some better fights initially. Built up a better bank of food, or avoided wasting his early food to the extent that Sacrifice did. I think like Sacrifice got so low on food as well because like his early Huskarl raids didn't achieve so much, and that was a lot of food for little return perhaps.
You could see that Sacrifice must be a little bit frustrated. He left right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, really tough games. I was really impressed with Sacrifice in these series. I mean, I knew that he was kind of like the DM prodigy in the past. He was very young and was like a top 3 player. He was like 16 years old when he was a top 3 player back in 2009, 10. And then after for a while he came back in recent times, and he goes right back to such a strong level so quickly. Really great to see that from Bastion. Yeah,
I mean, he looked in pole position to take this series pretty comfortably yesterday because he started so much faster than Jidba. Like, Jidba seemed pretty overwhelmed, but he warmed up and just kind of ground it out in traditional Jidba style, and then we've seen the same kind of thing today, certainly in the game 1, where he just wears you out.
Yep. Yeah, Jidba, he could definitely camp it out sometimes. I mean, he'll never admit that he likes to camp sometimes, but he definitely does that. But it's smart play. Like he wins the game. You gotta give him credit for that.
Yeah, I heard or read somebody saying in chat yesterday the fact that he's never failed to win a 1v1 tournament that he's entered. Is that true?
He has won every 1v1 tournament since 2003.
Wow, that's some going to remain active for that long. The
last time he lost a 1v1 tournament was actually against L Clan Bender. Yeah, it's amazing how much he's won. But yeah, Bender, I think he goes by Anton now or something like that. He's the one who beat him in the last time that Jidba ever lost a 1v1 tournament. It was the finals of Juno Cup 3. But anyway, so yeah, Jidba has won every tournament since then. That probably won't happen this time, but we'll see.
Fighting words. It probably won't happen this time because Orkut's going to win it, right?
Right.
Interdimension, for those who aren't familiar with that name. Are you going to be doing like tons and tons more trading to try and knock Jidba off his perch?
The last 2 weeks, I think I kind of took it easy a little bit, and that's might be why you asked me yesterday if like someone said that I wasn't very interested in Age of Empires. I think I just needed a little bit of a break, but now I'm gonna hit it again. I know today I'm gonna be training hard, and then throughout the next week, probably won't really see me training because I try to keep it on the down low. But yeah, I'll be getting there. I'm hoping to bring full power back soon.
Yeah, for those who want to know, Kellen's playing his first gold bracket match on Monday at 20 GMT. We'll be streaming that here with Clemenceau doing it, who is a legitimate deathmatch player himself and can offer far more insight than I am able to. And he's also streaming Interdimension versus Niltford 2 hours before that, Monday 18 GMT, so tomorrow. So if you want to see a DM marathon here on Vibly Official, then come back tomorrow in about 22 hours. See that? I think I'm going to take a bit of a break and then maybe come back and stream some RM a bit later. But thanks for joining me for that last game, Kellen. Pretty short. But yeah, look forward to seeing how you do tomorrow, and good luck.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and it was good to be on. Hopefully we'll cast more in the future.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for watching. Like I said, I might come back later, so keep an eye out for that if you really want to hear more of my voice droning on. Alright, guys. See ya.